afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Kelly Gottschall, Marketing Systems Specialist here at Sales Staff. Our webinar today should run around 40 minutes, and the recorded version will be available after today's session. As we proceed through today's webinar, we invite each of you to make comments, ask questions, and live tweet during today's session using the hashtag MoneyballMetrics. You can always ask questions via the GoToWebinar user interface, but we're closely monitoring the Twitter feed for awesome questions and comments. There's also a bonus for using Twitter during today's session. At the end of the webinar, we will select a random user who tweets using our hashtag to win a $50 Amazon gift card. The winner will be announced at the end of the webinar. Now on today's presentation. Our speaker this afternoon is Rick Riddle. Rick is a client partner of ours and brings more than 20 years of experience and energy in driving demand and stewarding customer success. Before I turn things over to Rick, I just have one last comment. Did you guys start tweeting yet? Rick, welcome, and I'm going to turn things over to you now.
Thank you, Kelly, and welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's a privilege to be with you. You know, I got to tell you guys, I love baseball, and not only do I love baseball, I've been playing and coaching and even umpiring since I was about 4 years old. And like most of you, I've been in sales one way or another since I was about 4 years old. Throughout the years, not much has changed in the way we approach either one, but the game itself, well, it's changed quite radically. And whether you're a sales player or a sales coach, this is how we often feel stepping up to the plate with a prospect. Happy, excited, hopeful, only to be met by this. Folks, today's prospects are better informed and better armed than ever before. In fact, they are bringing the game to you. So how do you win? Well, if you've seen the movie Moneyball, you already know that much has been written about the way Billy Beane chose to win with his club. Simply put, as the VP of Baseball Operations, Beane revealed a way to rely on analytics, statistics, and the science of numbers rather than opinions or appearances. And for those of you who haven't seen the movie, and by the way, I highly recommend it, the small market Oakland A's learned to compete with financial powerhouses like the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, by measuring players using new data-centric metrics that flew in the face of conventional wisdom. Before Moneyball, baseball scouts relied on popular but flawed performance indicators like batting average, runs batted in, and a player's overall baseball appearance. In other words, what a scout saw is just simply something in the gut. But the game and the economics of building a competitive team had changed. High-performing players were expensive, and a better understanding of statistical correlations made these old scouting reports simply obsolete, thus uncovering what Beane thought were hidden gems among the available and inexpensive players that quite simply had a knack for getting on base. Now, just like the Oakland A's, we're not hiring salespeople, right? We're investing in wins. And we don't just need our sales players to get to the plate, we need them to get on base and score. So as a sales or a marketing leader, we have to focus on the metrics that truly reflect winning today. So how do you prepare for success and stay ahead of the competition and stay within your budget? Well, just like Mr. Beane, it's Moneyball. Consistent, measurable, scalable metrics. And by the way, there are a ton of them. Pick one, pick two, pick 12, pick 20. There's a lot of metrics that we've used over the years. How much revenue am I generating? How quickly am I getting a win? How much profit is in what I'm winning? How much am I growing my customers? How good am I at keeping the customers? What's my average deal size? There are many, many metrics that you can have out there. Simply put, what we want to talk about today is among all the metrics that are available to you, which are the ones that really work for you and work for your team. So let's talk about a couple metrics. So metric number one, this is the number of sales appointments. And you know, since the dawn of the digital era, marketers have tracked click-through rates and form completions as a measure of success. Some even look at social shares as a buying signal, believe it or not. But none of these data points tell you if someone is truly intent with engaging with you or your solution offering. Now, the goal of every baseball team is to win the championship. But before that, you've got to get to the playoffs. And to do that, you have to win games, a lot of them. And to do that, you got to get people on base and score. The individual game level, the goals at the game level are determined in the moment. What's the goal of everyone at bat? Hit a home run, get a triple, double, a single, get a hit? No. It's simply to get on base. Do that and you have the best chance to score and win. Now, if you look at the traditional funnel, the sales funnel is what we used to call it, and the reason we call it the sales funnel is because everything that came into the funnel, Gravity just simply pulled those deals down all by itself and deals popped out of the bottom of it. Not the case anymore, right? In fact, marketing, we would suggest, owns the relationship a lot longer than they once did. It's marketing's job to bring those ideal prospects to us as a salesperson. So to do this, marketers, the end game is to create compelling opportunities for your sales team. Not just get them to the plate, get them on base. And to do that, your activities must be centered around different types of content that you want your prospects to engage with. Your main goal is to compel your busy audience to take some kind of action in the windstorms of their day in your favor. Complete this form, register for this webinar, read this awesome new ebook, and ultimately raise your hand and ask to engage with you one-on-one. That's what you're looking for, marketers. And by the way, if you're in sales, it's pretty simple, right? It's a score. I have runners on base. I need to bring them home. For example, how large is my pipeline of qualified opportunities? It's not gunked up by those who can never score, and I'm just simply hoping, praying, sticking my finger in the air, putting my manager off this week until I can get something really good in there. Keep them qualified. How efficiently am I moving them forward? When marketing gets a prospect on base for me, am I winning the ones I can and then sending the others back to the bench for marketing to nurture along until they're ready for me? And by the way, remember that revenue is not comprised of just one number calculated in isolation. It's calculated based on a series of key drivers that build up to revenue. Here's a metric that if you're not currently using, I suggest you give it a try. It's called pipeline velocity. And by the way, this is the Billy Bean way of leveraging multiple metrics at one time for a profound understanding of the sum total. And it really reads like this: a sales accepted lead, and whether yours is an appointment or a demonstration or a walkthrough, whatever that is, the point where marketing hands off a perfect prospect to you in sales. A sales accepted lead, the number of those times your win rate. Do you win 10% of all of those or 50% of those? The sales accepted lead times your win rate times your own average sales price, and then divided by the average length of sales cycle in days. So let's take a look at this, by the way. Now, the longer a deal hangs around the pipeline, stuck at a stage, the less likely it is to close. Pipeline velocity, the amount of time it takes for an opportunity to move from start to finish and from stage to stage, is therefore an incredible, important predictor of sales success. And if you can shorten your average sales cycle, you have the capacity, without increasing any resources or budget, to sell more. And now in one of our earlier webinars, we explored this element of pipeline measurement. And by the way, the larger the number, the better your pipeline velocity rate. So in this comparison, let's take the onus off of sales and let's put it square on lead generation, demand generation, marketing, not sales. So if your win rate and your average sales price remains the same, simply increasing the number of appointments or sales accepted leads by 2 and reducing the sales cycle from 60 days to 50 days, and that's because you're having better prospects in which your sales team can engage with, you've actually improved your pipeline velocity by 44%. So again, on the left, 10 meetings, we closed 25% of those at an average sales price of $100,000. Over a sales cycle of 60 days, our velocity is 4.1. Just by having 2 more appointments and decreasing our sales cycle rate, we have a 44% improvement in our velocity rate. Now, let's not just talk about pipeline velocity. Let's transfer those to real numbers, okay? So as you become more and more confident in the accuracy of a metric like this, you can continue to fine-tune it on the sales side by adding additional variables. For example, larger gains are possible by increasing your deal size and improving your win rates. But let's don't touch those now. Let's keep that on the demand gen side. So example number 1, 365 days in a year divided by 60. We can do 6 deals per year at 100,000. I'm sorry, 6 deals per period. So $250,000 within 60 days. So this person with that formula on the left is contributing $1.5 million over the year. Now, let's take this example and apply this thing to it. So if we are able to do 7.3 deals per year and do $300,000 now in a lesser period, 50 days, not 60, we've gone to $2.2 million in 1 year. Let me add one other thing to this. If you and your lead gen team are doing a great job, and if you can just add 2 more sales appointments per period, you can do $2.5 million in 1 year. So what does that mean? If your demand gen team can improve the number of appointments by just simply 40% with higher quality prospects, and only improve your sales cycle time by 17%, in this example, you can improve your annual revenue per sales rep by more than 70%. It's a fulcrum. $1 million added by just a couple more meetings and a faster sales cycle rate, pipeline velocity. By the way, there's other kinds of trigger events that are available to you in sales or marketing or demand gen, and they're on the customer side. Whether you read Forrester or Gartner or Serious Decisions, they tell us that anywhere from 57 to 61% of the buyer's journey is complete before they even engage with a salesperson. I agree with that, and by the way, if we do agree with that, look for some other trigger events that could be happening out there anonymously that you can be working on. Set some Google alerts for if you're in account management or you have an account-based marketing or sales focus. Set some Google alerts for all those companies. Know who's registering for your events and your white papers. Look on LinkedIn and find out if some key executives have moved on to another position, or if they've announced a new product, if a company has moved into a particular area. So look for some of these other trigger events that are happening out in the world that we don't normally track, but if you're a sales and marketer, you really should. But for those in sales, they all pale in comparison to meeting with your future dream client. You have to get in front of them. You have to get at the plate. You have to get on base and have an intentional discussion with them. Let's add one other element to metrics, by the way, and I'm going to talk here about lagging indicators versus leading measurable indicators. In the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, authors Chris McChesney and Sean Covey, I believe, by the way, they elegantly within this book pointed out that giving mediocre effort to multiple goals is a long and painful way to failure. Let me say that again. Giving mediocre effort to multiple goals is a long, painful way to failure. Instead, they advocate focusing your very best, your finest effort on the 1 or 2 goals that will make the most difference, providing the greatest leverage for you to achieve success. So apply disproportionate energy to the activities that drive your lead measures, not the lag measures that are too late to drive. This provides the leverage for achieving that lag measure that you want to report on. A lag measure, by the way, tells you if you have achieved the goal, or a lead measure tells you if you're likely to achieve it. Or as I used to say in some of my old companies, a lag measure is at the end of the year, did the company make its numbers? They didn't. The president got fired. Anytime throughout the year, does it look like we're going to make our year? Yes, great. No, the VP of sales gets fired. So make sure that you're doing it this way. And by the way, too many of us continue looking backward to report and measure on what happened. For example, how many of you sales and marketing managers out there are still running your weekly meetings where you bring in the team and then you go around the horn and ask every person on the team what they did last week? Well, while some of that reporting is meaningful, for example, trends, observations from the field, remembering that our sales team really is the tip of the spear for our company, what you really should be doing is measuring, managing, and then coaching around the metrics that will help you better understand what will happen next week, next month, next quarter, beyond. Shine a light way ahead instead of talking about what happened last week. Perhaps a better meeting might look like this, for example. Pick 1 or 2 lead measures. For example, number of product demonstrations or walkthroughs, then number of proposals or quotes issued. Then each week, along with understanding those trends and observations from your team, we would report first on last week's commitment. Next, we would review and update on the progress towards those commitments. In other words, help us see if the lead really is moving the lag, and then coach where we need to coach to help our team improve. And then finally, make new commitments. What am I going to do next week, not to move the lag measure, but what am I going to do next week to move the lead measure? Now, we can't influence lag measures, but we can influence lead measures. A lead measure foretells the result because it's predictable, as McChesney and Covey say. It's predictable. It's something that leads to the goal and is influenceable, an element within our control. As Billy Bean would say, the players that I can afford, the amount of times these players have a way of getting on base, that's what I'm looking for. The data on lead measures make the difference and help you close the gap. Trying to manage lag measures without understanding the lead measures just simply leads to poor results. Now over on the left, there's all the things that we typically see in our spreadsheets or our CRM documentation. This is all being talked about in the executive suite. So did we make our number? Did we make our inside number? Did we make the number we shared with the street? Are we improving our market share either in a product or a geography? How well are we doing at keeping and growing our customers? And how big are we growing those? So what's our earnings before income taxes and depreciation and amortization? Give me all of those. Those typically are done as a CFO likes to speak in CFO speak. Don't show me any pictures. Talk to me with percent signs and number signs and dollar signs. But on the right, these are all the elements that lead up to any of those numbers on the left. This is almost like a pipeline. So how many prospects is our marketing team currently engaged with at some level? Maybe it's an MQL 3, 4, or 5. They clicked through one of our emails. Or maybe it's an MQL 1 and they said, hey, have someone please contact me. How many prospect calls am I having, and then conversations and appointments? How many product demos or quotes or proposals am I issuing? Those are all your leading indicators, by the way. So you can also use the lead measure to forecast things like headcount, including marketing and lead generation for top of funnel activities, or account management and customer service at the other end. Now, if you're not ready to take on new headcount, this is the perfect time to outsource some of that activity at the top of the funnel, like lead generation or lead handoff or appointment setting for your sales team. You have much more room, and this is where you can make if you're going to make an error, make it here, so you can test and innovate and change at the top of the funnel to make those outsourcing decisions if in fact you are. It gets very, very risky the further down the funnel that you go. By the way, I want to say here that while we're talking about metrics and while they're important and all that, measure everything you can, innovate where you can, change and test where you can, but while you're measuring everything, make sure that every single one of your goals leads up to whatever business impact that you're trying to do. So just like there's an old solution selling a pain chain that comes from the CEO's office down to someone driving a truck, there's an impact change that goes the other direction. Make sure that what you're recommending for your clients impacts that chain going up. So once you know all your ratios, you can determine if you may have, for example, a hole in the bat. So here, a blueprint for putting all this together simply would help you understand, are we getting our sales team in front of enough of our very best prospects? Are we then issuing and winning enough of those proposals, or do we have a hole in the very sweet spot of our organization? I spent all this money, I hired this incredibly talented and highly credentialed and highly paid team, but I'm sending them up to the plate, but there's really no sweet spot, because by the time we've engaged with a lead, it's really just a lead. It's not a prospect. It's not a qualified opportunity for us. So, by the way, sales staff has some wonderful blueprints for building out your lead gen process and your demand gen team. Make sure you request some of those tools at the end of today's webinar. I'm sure that the team would love to share some of those with you. So let's, at a glance, take a look at this blueprint for what it might look like. So, hey, by the way, New York Mets pitching great Tom Seaver. He retired from baseball with 311 wins. Pretty phenomenal, right? Well, that's not even close to a record that truly may never be broken in baseball. That record belongs to Cy Young. Cy Young didn't win 312 or 323 or even 400. Cy Young won practically an impossible 511 games. So when Young played, by the way, there was no such baseball position as a middle reliever or a closer. The starter was the closer. The starter was the middle reliever. In fact, in 1908, when Cy Young was pitching, there was another pitcher that pitched for Detroit. His name was Ed Summers. Ed, in one day, pitched and won back-to-back games of a doubleheader. The second game went into extra innings. Summers actually pitched and won 2 games, 19 innings in a row in over 5 hours, just a little more than 5 hours. So what does that say about today's pitchers? Well, they're not any worse. In fact, I would suggest to you that they're even finer athletes than any of those guys that played in the early 1900s. What has changed is the game. It's more competitive, there's a higher need for specialization, and teams are getting further and further behind by not understanding the science of what it means to win and manage a team. So, and how does this relate to sales? Well, the sales game has changed also. As we've talked about in multiple webinars, and again, whether it's Forrester or Gartner or Serious Decisions or Sales Staff, wherever you get your understanding, just make sure you understand that buyers control the process. They not only control the process today, they control the economics of you building and maintaining very specialized teams, so how you can engage with them. It's vastly different than it has been, folks, in the last 10 or 20 years. So, and by the way, I've made these mistakes. I've made them all. I did what we all do. When things weren't going well and it looked like we weren't going to make numbers and I felt like I might be able to, be one of those guys that's going to get canned, I just went out and bought a new list, fired a few people, got some more players. It doesn't work that way. Simply adding more players on the roster, more salespeople on your team, that no longer equates to higher revenues. In fact, it doesn't equate anymore to success at all. In a world where, according to Serious Decisions, by the way, 67% of the buyer's journey is complete before a buyer even engages with someone on your sales team, we need to rethink our own strategy of sales closers and starters and middle relievers. And since your goal is to get the game into the hands of your closers, that's what we want to do. We want to specialize in those areas. Today's prospect may view your product video, they'll check out your pricing page, register for a webinar, sign up for a free trial, click a Facebook ad, download a white paper. Heck, they can even investigate you personally through someone that they know within their own circles or through any available social channel out there like Facebook or LinkedIn. And they do all this, by the way, all before they engage with you. I can't count the number of meetings I've been on, online meetings, where I know the person on the other end, because I'm certainly do it. On my end, I'm actually looking at you and your LinkedIn profile, maybe some of your pictures, guard those, by the way, that you've got out there on Facebook. I want to know who I'm talking to before I have that meeting. And by the way, just like a baseball game, a complete sales cycle includes every one of those interactions a prospect has had with your company, from the very first time landing on your blog or the very first time they open up an email to the day they sign a contract with you. But yet many companies still expect their salespeople to do their own lead qualification, their own cold calling, their own closing, and their own account management. Are you crazy? Seriously, please don't do that. This is the wrong approach. It's a recipe for failure. It absolutely is a blueprint for not succeeding. It's not only a killer of productivity for your team, but you as a manager, you have less visibility into the problem areas that you can go and coach in. I like the way Aaron Ross says in his book, Predictable Revenue. Aaron was the guy who launched the sales team at Salesforce.com. He wrote a really, really neat book. If you don't have it, I'd suggest add it to your library, Predictable Revenue. He divides the sales role into specialized functions to increase efficacy of the entire team. Again, velocity, the sum of the parts, right? In keeping with our Moneyball theme, I'd suggest thinking about lead generation as your starting pitcher. Start us off right. Tee us up for winning. Get us and keep us in the game. Next is the middle reliever. Your job is to prospect and further qualify and further develop and hold our position in the game and deepen that engagement before passing on to one of our closers, one of our sales executives. So as we wrap up, let me just suggest to you a number of things here. Good metrics, solid sales metrics and marketing metrics aren't used just as a predictor of what you're going to do. They help you forecast as opposed to, as the old scouts in baseball used to do, just go with the gut and see what happens. By the way, who should you hire? Do you need to go out and hire that person who has 20 years of industry experience and wants to leverage you to pay them a lot more for what they have done than for somebody who you know lines up specifically for you, your organization, your market, your customers, your product? Make sure that your sales and marketing teams are closer aligned. If you don't have an SLA, a service level agreement that tells marketing and sales what that trigger point is, that handoff point, that sales accepted lead, what it really should be, and that should be non-negotiable, do that. Make sure that you understand where risk is. Risk is the first thing we should be thinking about when we meet a new prospect, not the last thing. And they're not thinking about it. If you don't bring it up and you don't add that to your metrics in your equation, then the last thing that typically happens is right before they make that decision, right before they write the big check, risk has a way of showing up, and if undealt with is what wrecks your deal. And finally, using all these metrics allows you, as McChesney and Covey like to say in the 4 disciplines, that it allows you to have that cadence of discipline and accountability. Whatever you do, by the way. In fact, there's some really neat slides. I know that they're going to be available after the webinar. But if you walk away today and you only remember one thing, remember this: that there's a lot going on, that there's a lot happening that's going to take you away of the most important stuff. To execute your plan, in the midst of distraction, you need the discipline of execution. Not only does everybody on your team need to know the score, hey, how are we doing? Are we losing? Are we falling behind? Are we winning? They need to be accountable for their role in improving the score. And you simply can't do that without a scoreboard or a dashboard. Remember also that metrics are never, ever one size fits all. Instead of trying to persuade you that these certain measurements are the best, I just want to empower you and encourage you to define the right metrics for you and your team, and then live by those, manage against those, coach against those until you think you need to change some of those. And once you implement a scorecard, you'll turn your sales efforts into a well-oiled machine. Your executive team will thank you for increased productivity and process efficacy. Your prospects, by the way, they will want to do business with you because, as Jack Welch said once, you show up prepared and you have a business-level discussion instead of stories and anecdotes. Those are his favorite salespeople, by the way. So have a scorecard. Start big. Get specific. And focus on action. Know the 1 or 2 leading indicators that will shine the light forward on your goal progress. If you need help, by the way, again, developing that scorecard, contact the fine folks at sales staff. And they have plenty of templates to get you started. So let's wrap up. How did Billy Beane and the Oakland A's do it? Well, we've learned over time that Moneyball made his team successful and his strategy famous. And that famous Moneyball was metrics. And while Beane focused on rigorous statistical analysis to not only choose the right players, the team that he built produced the right metrics that ultimately led to winning games. And just like the A's, for those of us in sales and marketing, the key to winning is to focus relentlessly on our own stats and then optimize the team around those winning stats. For marketers, it's about quantifying which sources, which activities get our salespeople in front of the very best prospects, and then calculating how much revenue we're generating for our company or for our business or our business unit. For sales, it's about quantifying our success rate in converting those ideal prospects into customers. And by tracking and measuring and managing and coaching through the entire relationship funnel, we can make the most of the budget we have to drive ROI and essentially drive and grow our business. So if Moneyball teaches us one thing, it's that you don't need a big budget to win. Even if you're batting with a short bench, good metrics will carry you to success. So Kelly, I'm going to wrap up here and turn it back to you, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Rick. Like Rick said, we're going to open it up for any questions that you may have. Please continue to submit your comments and questions via Twitter. They have been great. Or obviously feel free to use the GoToWebinar user interface. Rick, our first question comes from James, and he said we recently started measuring speed to contact roles at his company. He's also heard about speed to contact attempts. Is there a difference, and if so, why does it matter which one I measure?
Nice question, James. And by the way, I told you there's probably 100 or so metrics that you could measure, and we didn't even talk about these two. So when thinking about early funnel metrics that matter the most, these are two of the categories that you really could focus on. One is lead quality metrics, speed to contact, and the other is team management, speed to contact. The first helps you understand what the quality of the leads that your marketing team is generating, and as a sales manager or as a lead gen manager, the second one helps you to get a better result out of your team members. So let me just talk about these just briefly. So speed to contact. This measures the time elapsed before the first live conversation between someone from your company, your team, and the prospect. For example, if you're getting a lot of leads where the speed to contact attempt is incredibly fast, but the actual speed to contact is slow, then I would say you're doing a good job of getting back to people quickly, but it also means that a high level of intention from your prospect, it's simply not there. And if that's the case, I would suggest marketing may want to do something different to get you in front of better quality leads, not just a bunch of people who are getting your stuff. I had a company years ago, and me and my partners worked a deal with a famous company that provided paid white papers. And we paid a considerable amount of money for this, and we started giving them away right and left. It was our premium content. And we had thousands of people that signed up for our blog, downloaded our white paper, and we had 3 or 4 people who actually engaged with us. So while they appreciated the good content, getting back to them quickly didn't mean anything to us in terms of getting them to engage with us. Now, speed to contact attempt, again, like I said, that's the time it takes when a lead is received to when you call or email or respond to their inquiry. This metric, by the way, is a leading indicator of whether your sales or your lead gen team is really covering the bases, so to speak. And according to InsideSales.com, this is one of the metrics that most correlates with the ultimate metric, which is your conversion rate. So again, if a salesperson is calling quickly, it means they've not only got their head in the game, but it also will help you see results in them hitting higher sales numbers. And it provides you as a manager with the insight into which of your reps are lagging behind or failing to contact your best leads in a timely manner. So good question, James. Thanks.
Thanks, Rick. So Rick, you had mentioned specializing and dividing some sales roles. One of our attendees company, they only have a few sales reps. Are they too small to consider specializing?
I hear that a lot, Kelly, and another good question, by the way. And I think if you're on this webinar, we've all been there. We've all been there. I certainly have. And I would suggest that even if you believe that you're too small to specialize, just like Aaron Ross says in predictable revenue, it's sooner than you think. The 2 highest paid and most sought after baseball players today are the starters and the closers. So think about that think about that baseball analogy to sales. If you don't have starters and all you have is closers, I don't think you have a Cy Young on your team who's going to win 511 for you. In fact, I would say after you hire a salesperson that can close, the very next person you should hire should be a sales rep who is specifically dedicated to engaging prospects and generating those quality prospects for your first closer. A rule of thumb, by the way, that I've often used is that once your sales reps as a group are spending more than 20% of their time on a secondary function, so again, if their primary function is to close, and now they're spending 20% of their time prospecting, then break that function out into a new role. If someone whose primary goal is to close new sales begins spending 20% of their time generating and qualifying and prospecting for leads, it's just simply time to look at specializing and creating a separate role for that part of your pipeline management.
Thanks, Rick. There are a lot of comments and questions coming in via Twitter and the GoToWebinar user interface. So we are going to take one last question, and this actually comes from somebody who was on one of our previous webinars. She said, in one of your last webinars, you stated that only 1% of all leads actually turn into revenue. What do you suggest we do better to optimize our cost per lead?
So while I appreciate your focus on cost per lead, and it's certainly a formidable marketing metric, focusing just on leads causes one of those misaligned goals that I talked about between sales and marketing. So it's probably a good metric. I wouldn't make it one of my 1 or 2 primary metrics, because in marketing it's all about leads, and there's big question marks around all those, and in sales it's all about revenue, and we can't afford question marks. We need dollar signs. And by the way, Forrester Research, that they're the ones who said that if both groups, sales and marketing, if they're not properly aligned with the ultimate goal, then it's not surprising that 99% of all leads generated by marketing never convert into customers. If your intention is to grow your business, I'd encourage you to focus on generating customers and revenue, not just leads or cost per lead. By the way, I'm not saying that generated leads isn't vitally, vitally important. We all know that it is. But leads as a standalone goal just simply doesn't work anymore. It's about pipeline marketing and pipeline management. It's evolved into lead generation that focuses on the entire funnel, making decisions based on revenue instead of just leads. So it's not about how many you have in the funnel, it's about the movement of those quality leads that are moving through the funnel from a marketing qualified to a sales accepted to a sales qualified lead. It's about optimizing all aspects of the marketing and sales functions as a team to widen the stage of the funnel and give your team the very best chance of winning. So it's not just cost per lead, It's making sure that you're focusing on all the elements that drive the ultimate goal, which is either winning new business, growing, or contributing more to revenue. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Rick. So we're just coming up around the 40-minute mark. We're going to go ahead and conclude our webinar today. I just wanted to thank Rick for his time today and thank all of you for joining us as well. If we didn't get to your questions during the webinar, look for a response from us shortly. And our big winner today for the $50 Amazon gift card and the awesome tweets is Brad at WACA 2013. Brad will be reaching out to you shortly to get you your gift card. If you have any further questions, please visit our website, salesstaff.com, or reach out to us through social media. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you all have a great afternoon.